the Victor Wembanyama draft. It's been hyped since pretty much since last season, pretty much since the draft began, and he's officially a Spur. Brandon Miller's now a Hornet. Everyone hated that pick in Charlotte, and then Scoot Henderson is now a Trailblazer. So that's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. The NBA draft is really tough for me because while it is faster than the NFL draft, everyone seems to be a bust in the top 3. It seems like 2 out of the 3 guys are always a bust. The Tatum draft, we had Lonzo Ball, God rest his soul, and Markelle Fultz, who's a fine player now in Orlando. He's a good player. He's a good role player in Orlando. So is he a number 1 pick? No, he's not. And then it's just been Zion Williamson. You have someone threatening to release his sex tapes, getting a tattoo of his name on her face. Kind of been a colossal train wreck there.
She didn't threaten it. She did. She got a tattoo on his face.
No, she's threatening to release the sex tapes and then got a tattoo of him on his face. She even hopped in. Stephen A was doing a live on YouTube for the Stephen A Smith show for his podcast, and then she hopped in his super chats.
That's incredible.
And then the worst one was Wiggins and Jabari Parker. Again, Wiggins turned himself into a nice role player, but then we had Jabari Parker, and then Embiid took like 4 years to get going. But again, the number 3 pick was the best player in that draft, just like Tatum, just like Jaylen Brown in his draft.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Jabari Parker because you know who's working out with him? The Suns. They're working out with Jabari Parker to fill the role.
That makes sense.
Him and Stanley Johnson. So
they just need bodies.
Yeah, they just need bodies. And hey, he hasn't had an opportunity. I don't think he played at all last year. So
no, he didn't. I think the last team he played for was Boston, actually.
Yeah, but it's funny because I looked at the last 30 NBA drafts, and every single draft had the same pattern: 3 players, top 3 picks. One of them was a bust, and one of them was arguably a superstar, or at least, a formidable star, all-star, and then one of them was a wild card. And I'm not even kidding, 27 of the 30 drafts, I had it just like that. And the weirdest draft so far was the Ben Simmons draft, because is Ben Simmons a bust? I can't call him a bust because he was an all-NBA player, but like what he is now, woof. Like that draft, because that was him, Brandon Ingram, who I can't call him a bust either because he's been solid. And then I want to say that was the Jaylen Brown draft too. So
Jaylen Brown, yeah.
So that's a weird draft to talk about. And then there's also like you had DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, bust, huge bust, massive bust, and then Luka Doncic. So it's like
Luka,
another 3 pick, another 3 pick from fucking 40 years ago, Michael Jordan. Not that I'm saying Scoot Henderson's Michael Jordan by any means. I'm not that crazy.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I look at the top 3 picks, and I feel like those are the 3 picks that matter. The other ones, who fucking knows? Nobody knows. The NBA draft is weird. Like, you're talking about 60 players that are taken, and about 20 of them will actually, like, have a career, and the rest of them are going to either phase out, be huge busts, phase out of the league, or just not even play, period.
Yeah, and I think the trend now is take the foreign guy.
Yeah.
Take the foreign guy if you have any doubt, because now you could argue the top 3 players in the NBA all played overseas: Giannis, Greece; Jokic, Serbia; and Luka in Spain. And you could argue that those are the top 3 players in the NBA. Do I believe that? No, but I do think they're all in the top 5. I would put Luka probably right up there with Giannis and Jokic once he wins a championship, and then Steph Curry I would still have to put up there, but you could argue those are 3 of the top 5 guys in the league. And then I remember Stephen A Smith was like, the Suns would be insane if they took DeAndre Ayton, or they took Luka over DeAndre Ayton. And he was like, how could you, like, DeAndre Ayton's from Arizona, he went here. And then these kind of it's like the AAU culture. It's like, it's a lot more chill in the NBA. Everyone's a lot more buddy. Everyone kind of more like just likes the lifestyle, where the European players, they just played basketball since they were younger, and they're playing up against grown men. So now Luka went on JJ Redick. He's like, yeah, it's easier to score 30 points in the NBA than it is in Europe. And he stands by it. And then also overseas, you know what they can do? They can take the ball off the rim, which is, I think, something that the NBA, if you want to kind of even out the offense and defense, make it a little bit more competitive, just let players take the ball off the rim. But you have to get used to playing basketball, going to the rim, where people can just snatch your shot. There's no goaltending there either. So I think that helps you develop when you're younger too. And just being 13 and you're playing up against someone much bigger than you. I did that in high school. I would go play with the older guys who are a lot stronger than me when I was 15 and 16. And it made it a lot easier when I was playing up against people my own age.
Yeah, absolutely. And so looking at these big three picks, right? You got Brandon Miller, Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson. My initial thoughts on Wembanyama. So much hype. He's the most hyped prospect, arguably since LeBron. And it's not that I don't think he's going to be very good. I think he's going to be a star. I think he'll be eventually an all NBA player. But the amount of hype that he's had, I mean, there's people comparing him to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There's people, he's with the Spurs. He's got the Greg Popovich. I think he's got everything in place for him to succeed. But the amount of hype for a guy who's 19, never played in the NBA, super skinny, super tall too. They showed a metric of all the tallest players in NBA history. You got like Manute Bol struggled with injuries. You had Yao Ming struggled with injuries.
Kristaps
Porzingis, next player. Lamar, yeah, exactly. Like all these guys, super hurt all the time, and I feel like he needs to condition himself before I can like wrap my arms around him. I want him to have a nice long career, but that's my biggest concern with him.
Yeah,
is his conditioning. Brandon Miller, he's got all the signs of being a bust. I'm sorry. I mean, you cannot go on live television, say to me first, just the first thing he said that was stupid was saying that Paul George is the greatest player of all time. How can you be the greatest of all time if you've never won a title? Whatever. Okay, whatever. That's the favorite player.
You push LeBron and his super team with Miami, one of the first modern age super teams, right after Boston. He kind of did it better than them with Roy Hibbert and an old David West and Lance Stevenson and George Hill, and he pushed them to a game 7, not once, but twice. Before Paul George got injured, Paul George was the next coming of LeBron James. He was there coming for the throne for Kevin Durant and Melo. Now he had a catastrophic injury, but if you're a young guy like Brandon Miller, and then you see that dunk on LeBron James from Paul George, you're like, oh yeah, maybe if we switch teams and Paul George had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and all the shooting and Eric Spoelstra, maybe he's the one who went out there and won 4 rings.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's George Paul.
Yeah. And then the next thing he said that was crazy was saying that the Hornets could make the finals next year. No, you can't. I don't care if you're Michael fucking Jordan. You are not making the finals next year. You, LaMelo Ball, and who else? Who?
Do they still have Mikal Bridges?
No, I don't think so. I think he's a free agent, is he not?
Yeah, maybe they got Mason Plumlee or someone.
Oh, there we go. Mason Plumlee.
Yeah,
Finals MVP.
Yeah, no, Brandon Miller. I first knew he was a bust when he got drafted by the Hornets. Like when it became apparent that Michael Jordan's last pick was going to be Brandon Miller, his only good pick ever, I think, has been LaMelo Ball. Because I think LaMelo Ball is definitely, if he gets through his injury issues, he's someone who's crazy talented. So if Brandon Miller's good, that could be a dynamic duo. And in Boston, they used to think that Gordon Hayward was the second coming of Larry Bird. So do with that what you will. And then, yeah, him just saying, yeah, I see the Hornets in the finals next year. That's not even like just a confidence thing. That's just comes off as delusional, and it's opening up the door for fans to make fun of you already, like we're doing right now. And then saying Paul George is the GOAT, it's like, is he a top 10 player of his generation? Like, I remember that. Do you remember that series when it was him and Russell Westbrook versus Dame? And then Dame took the step back on Paul George in his face. I'm pretty sure that ends any GOAT conversation right there. If you want to argue someone who's never won a ring as the GOAT, you would probably argue in the modern era, probably someone like Dame, who's been able to take the Trailblazers with minimal help to a few conference championships. But Paul George, come on.
No, it's ludicrous.
Yeah.
And now Scoot Henderson might be Dame Lillard's replacement. I think he'll be nice in the NBA. We'll see if he's a superstar. Got a lot of talent. I think he'll be good. Rumor has it that Dame would be interested in Miami. We've talked about it on the show before. I think they're going to talk sometime this week. So next episode, we'll definitely fill in on the aftermath of that conversation, whether or not they break up. Just break up. We've talked about it before. Just break up. But it seems like Scoot Henderson will be the best player in this draft. Unless if there's somebody in the lottery that we don't know about, but that seems to be the consensus.
You think he'll be better than Wembanyama?
I think he's gonna have a longer career than Wembanyama. I think Wembanyama is gonna play about 10 years.
Yeah, that makes sense because like even Chet Holmgren just got played, and I don't want to like rag on the guy before he plays. So until he gets an injury, I'll hope for the guy, but at the same time, it's a lot of impact. We saw what happened to Porzingis, and people are like, "Oh, he's Porzingis but more talented." How do you know that? Like
Mm.
Porzingis kind of had a similar build and talent coming into the NBA. And just because the guy's tall doesn't mean anything anymore. And it's such a grind to really take that next step. Look how long it took Jokic to finally break through and then win back to back MVPs. And then he even struggled in the playoffs. But then once he got his ring, it was like 10 years in the league at this point.
Yeah.
And then like Tatum is an exception to these young players like having a breakthrough. And one thing about the NBA draft is these guys aren't going to be making an impact for 4 or 5 years. What Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum did is kind of an anomaly. Look how long it took even Giannis
Mhm.
to develop those skills. Luca is an exception to coming in the league and just dominating at this point. Look how long it took Steph. Like LeBron, Luca, all those players are an exception. Even Kobe. It's like he wasn't a world changer when he first stepped into the league, and he needed Shaq to win his first 3 chips.
Yeah, exactly. So this draft, I mean, we'll see what happens, but so far I have a feeling Scoot Henderson will be the best in that draft.